Government funding deadline, questions over Epstein files, and crime bills to match President Trump's crackdown. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the report.
Government funding is the most urgent issue on the Capitol Hill agenda right now. Lawmakers face an end-of-the-month deadline to fund the government and avoid a shutdown. A key consideration here is the fact that Republicans need Democrat buy-in to get it done. This could be problematic considering the fact that Republicans continue to pursue spending cuts. Added into the mix, the White House is now requesting Congress to approve another rescissions package, $4.9 billion in cuts to foreign aid. We're also expecting to see several high-profile votes on the House side, including one related to the Epstein files. House Speaker Mike Johnson over the weekend hinted that lawmakers are on track to release them.
The administration have been fully compliant with Congress's subpoenas, and they've submitted over 34,000 Epstein documents already. Our House Oversight Committee is doing their due diligence so that we can release it all.
And over in the Senate, several of President Trump's nominees are still awaiting confirmation. Leadership in the Senate may try to change the rules in order to fast-track them as Democrats continue to employ tactics to try to slow-walk those nominations. And as the president pursues a crime crackdown in D.C. and other high-crime cities, it's likely that Republican leadership will put forth several crime-related bills. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Congress is back in session. Joining us now to discuss what to expect is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. Good to see you both again. I hope you guys had a good holiday. And before we get into what to expect with Congress, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, she said on X that there will be an announcement today from Trump about the Department of Defense. Maybe it could be a name change. Tony, how do you feel about calling it the Department of War again?
Well, first of all, good afternoon to you both. I think it's a good decision. I do. I think renaming things, a lot of the classical American institutions, makes the point of levity of the idea of defensive actions no longer something that Americans hold to. Rather, that war is a very serious thing, and that when you speak softly and carry a big stick, the name should in fact reflect that, and therefore those actions should be taken with gravity. If instead it's moving the Space Force, somewhere else to a different state or something like that, I'm interested in seeing where that particular complex or series of industries go, and I'm kind of looking forward to this one. I'm interested.
Okay, Mike, quick reactions. How do you like the sound of Department of War?
From the person who ran on No New Wars, I don't like renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War. That's just me personally. I'm opposed to all war. I'm opposed to weapons of war that we have roaming the streets like we saw in the Minnesota shooting and other school shootings that have happened. So I'm opposed to that. But I will echo something that Tony did say about, I was interested in this briefing to find out that it potentially could be moving something from a blue state to a red state. How does that impact different sectors? And will we see more of that in line with this second administration this time around? I'm interested to see how that all shakes out for sure.
All right, I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to talk about this. But Tony, what are you looking out for in this session of Congress, and what is the most significant item in your view?
Well, I'm sure we're going to get the question for the 837th time. Can Speaker Mike Johnson cobble together enough support? Yeah, the man works in small majorities. I think the more interesting question here is what Congress does in order to pass what is likely to be another continuing resolution. You've had statements from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer all of a sudden saying bipartisanship is the way to go after calling their political opponents everything short of the devil down out of Georgia. So I'm interested in seeing this total flip turnaround, and I honestly wouldn't be terribly surprised if you saw Democrats trying to pull something that the Texas Democrats did via redistricting. I think that we are in the season of political theater, and if you think that it's calmed down, oh, buddy, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Okay, Mike, what are you focused on?
Yeah, I mean, Tony touched on a couple of things there, but let's start with the biggest elephant in the room. He's not even alive anymore, and that's Jeffrey Epstein and these files, and Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie and their potential bill and this House vote that will happen. That's number one. Number two, and we just covered it in the last episode of the Can We Please Talk podcast about the National Guard and D.C. and the president being within his authority to do that in D.C., but he needs the extension past these 30 days to have congressional approval Where does that all shake out? We just saw what the judge's decision kind of weighed in terms of the California National Guard. We talked about that as well on the latest episode. But one thing that I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to, something I'm looking forward to in the fall chamber outside of Congress, is also the Supreme Court and their docket coming up. But there's something in Congress that's very interesting right now. There's a bill that's kind of stewing around this Fair Tax Act and abolishing the IRS. I don't think it'll get a lot of support. Right now, it has no co-sponsors from Democrats. It has 14 Republicans that are interested in it. But it is interesting. Abolishing the IRS, will you get, do I get some of that tax money back? Americans want to know some of these things. And so that's one of the bills that I think will be interesting if that ever gets taken up in this fall.
Okay, Tony, I want to follow up on what you mentioned about government funding. Why do we hear more often, than we like about the threat of a government shutdown? Give us your view on the budget process in Congress.
Well, there hasn't been a budget process for a very long time because Congress is not constitutionally required to effectively balance and pass a budget. Since you no longer have single kind of line item bills, things just get, again, shoved together in this weird parliamentarian rules mess that is essentially ends up being more loopholes than an actual bill itself, pushing some funding over here, saying this is going to sunset in 2028 when actually it's not going to sunset. It'll just go on forever. Fiscal irresponsibility has just become the party that spends a ton and the party that spends a ton and a half. And so I'm interested in seeing this budget process that will end up being, again, the political theater of saying, well, my opponent wants to kill all puppies. And that's not what the bill says, but there is one element inside the bill that would say provide healthcare for puppies. And if you don't vote for that, then you're evil. I mean, this has been that kind of stuff. You heard it with the healthcare thing. Oh, Americans are all going to lose healthcare. It's going to be terrible. And really, the provisions were a lot more strict and specific. I don't know. The long-term implications of a budget bill like this are likely going to be middling. That's not a good thing. I think that the budget should be the centerpiece of the legislature. But I don't believe we've yet hit the point where Congress is going to have the fire under them for the future insolvency of things like our entitlement programs. And until then, the budget is just going to be a bloated, sluggish monster, if you'll pardon all of the colloquials today.
So, Mike, you think has Congress become reliant on measures like continuing resolutions instead of passing full appropriation bills?
Don, I'm nodding along with you. You just said what I was about to say, almost as if you have my answers here. Did you steal them? Because again, how many times in the last 2.5, 3, 4 years have we heard the term CR, 45 days? Everyone and their mother, if you follow American politics, you watch any network, you will know those two letters and you will know that it's a 45-day. It's just continuing to punt the football down the field. It's, you know what, we'll deal with that in the fall session. You know what, we'll deal with that in the spring session. And here we are yet again, where Tony is right about the political theater of all this, because you need 60 votes, in the Senate for something to pass, which means it's going to require at least 7 Democrats to buy in. So there is going to be the political theater of it. To Tony's point about, I mean, I would have made a different analogy on the puppy thing, but I totally get it. Sarah McLachlan notwithstanding, but he's right. There's the political theater of it, and it's because of what is happening with these continuing resolutions and never having this true solution. And that's what we get in American politics. And this is why, by the way, this is why people are frustrated with American politics, because they don't understand the process that Tony and myself have outlined here, and you as well, Don. But then the other part of it is like, okay, so what happens after September 30th? Am I shut down? Do I lose my job? If I'm a federal worker, what does that mean for me? Yeah, it does mean for you may get furloughed, you may get let go for all intent and purpose. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces with all this, and a lot of people just don't understand it. They just see the political theater in all of it.
So Tony, one point here: how are Republicans going to get the 7 Democrat votes? What's that process going to look like?
Well, it's not necessarily likely that they'll need to. Again, you can get kind of a pseudo-nuclear option if it's a non-additional expenses kind of a situation. Whether or not the rules will be able to be overridden or not is kind of up to anyone's guess here. The idea that likely you're going to have Democrats say, well, we want all of these spending measures in, when Republicans will say, no, meet us halfway. And then, as we've heard from the last 2 continuing resolution fist fights, where, you know, guys like Mike and I are up until 2 a.m. covering the last minute 30th vote on whatever, that the answer from the Democrat leadership comes back, no, we're not going to compromise on this. And Republicans aren't going to compromise the other way, because a lot of that alleviates some of the big things that Republicans ran on in the last election. And so you inch closer to a full nuclear option in the Senate. And again, this is one of the interesting points to watch is increasingly things like the budget become hyper political culture wise, where each side is called evil for micro items in the legislation. That eliminates any opportunity for compromise, because Susan Collins, the Republican of Maine, is going to be called evil if she sides with Republicans on this. And then John Fetterman of the Democrats in the Pennsylvania is going to be called evil if he sides with Republicans on this. And so essentially what you have is this endless loop of, again, political theater, because it's all about getting to that midterm campaign session in 26 and making more promises that no one's really going to solve the root causes of anyway. I know Trump has some cuts that he's looking to swing through. I'm interested in seeing what other things are kind of put up in order to balance that out. And so likely we'll just get some more football kicking.
Okay, Mike, you can respond if you would like to, but there's another thing I want to talk to about today, and that's lawmakers potentially will have to address a White House request to cut $4.9 billion in foreign aid, and it's known as a pocket rescission. So, Mike, does using a pocket rescission, in your view, infringe on Congress's power over spending decisions?
Yeah, well, to piggyback on something Tony said there, I wake up the next morning and read what happened. I'm not staying awake until 2 a.m. So sorry about that, Tony. But
we were so lucky.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, listen, in terms of foreign aid spending, like right now, this has been the push and pull that we've seen, Don, with respect to foreign aid and assistance. We've seen cuts at USAID. We've seen now these wars right now, what we're going to do in terms of spending weaponry and providing aid to some of these countries and weapons to some of these countries, Israel, for an example. So to answer the broader question is, does it overreach on Congress's authority? I'm to a certain extent. But I also think right now, I think foreign policy is kind of a little bit higher up the totem pole right now, at least in this fall session, speaking with a couple of House Democrats like we've had on the show during the summer months, right before the break, and Speaker Johnson gave everybody the recess break. One of the things we talked about, and speaking to Representative Johnny Ozowski, for example, from Maryland, I mean, I think the second or third question I asked him was about how his constituents have digested what is happening in Gaza, because he's getting those questions in town halls right now. He's getting asked, what are we going to do about the kids that are starving in Gaza? What are we going to do about how much money we give to Israel in terms of weaponry? So it's something that's coming up for these folks out on the trail. To Tony's point, 26 is coming up not that far away, right? Where we're going to start in some states, we're going to start, some primary processes. And so everyone's kind of looking towards that. Well, if you're looking towards that, you got to go back out on the road. And what you got to go back on the road is you got to champion what you've done in Congress. And if you haven't done anything in Congress, well, why are you still in office in Congress? And so those are some of the things that's kind of the way that I look at it, Don.
Okay, Tony, final thoughts on anything we talked about today, and how do you view the pocket rescission?
Well, I mean, as far as the pocket rescission is concerned, this is what happens when Congress abdicates its duty. Again, creating all of the federal agencies that are as bloated and as large as they are. You have congressmen and women who are more interested in running for re-election than they are actually sitting down and doing the hard work of governing. Again, with the massive amount of laws, that is a heavier workload. I understand that comes with a large federal government. It does, in fact, tax the very balance of power. I mean, I understand the concerns on both sides of that concern. But regarding all of these, I will say it is very difficult to get the American public worked up over in arms about budget bills anymore. It's not 98. And unfortunately, Americans, the Democrats have tried over the last couple of months to run on, Americans don't like the big, beautiful bill. I've looked at the polling. The questions that they are touting as the proof for that, they aren't asking people about that at all. They're asking very vague, kind of awkward questions that don't seem to address whether or not Americans are concerned about the bill. This is kind of political theater right now, just because we know that it has to be innately. So as to whether or not Congress does anything that resonates with voters, I mean, this would be the first time in the last couple of years I've seen a budget process. The big green bill or whatever his infrastructure bill in the Biden administration was supposed to get Americans up in arms. It didn't. The big, beautiful bill was supposed to get Americans up in arms. It didn't. So Americans like to see effects more than I guess they are concerned about bill fights in Congress. Again, unfortunately.
Well, okay, good discussion today. That's our time. Thank you both, as always. Pleasure having you, Mike, Tony.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, guys.
The Justice Department is suing Illinois for providing in-state tuition and scholarships for students in the U.S. illegally. The DOJ argues that the policies discriminate against American citizens. The department